we're gonna get like copyright violated if we do that. No copyright violations as we do Journey karaoke. Everybody, hello and welcome back. It's been a while, but we are back here after a short hiatus for a Democrat and Republican walk into a bar. I'm your Democratic host, Dr. Cindy Banyai.
I am your Republican host, Sean Hartman, and it's good to be back.
It is.
You've been busy. Obviously you were up in Tallahassee helping the campaign. Talk to us about that. How'd that go?
Pensacola in CD1, Congressional District 1. So yeah, Florida just had two special elections. Well, several special elections, but two congressional special elections that garnered nationwide interest because there was a lot of steam that gathered behind the Democratic candidates and the potential for them to cause a stalemate in the U.S. House. So much so that former UN ambassador appointee Elise Stefanik had pulled her nomination and was asked to stay in the U.S. House because her district was actually a little bit less Republican than the districts in Florida.
Harder to flip.
Easier to flip, right.
For the Democrats,
So I was working on the Gay Belmont campaign. It was very interesting and exciting. Got to see what was going on. I wanted to go up there because Gay Belmont was a friend of mine. She and I were roommates actually at the Democratic National Convention last summer during the presidential convention. And she was actually based here for a while in Southwest Florida as a statewide lead for Moms Demand Action and had supported me in my 2020 and 2022 campaign. So she and I had quite a history together, and I was very excited to go and support her and actually see what a well-funded Democratic campaign in Florida looked like.
They actually gave her money. Who knew? How did it feel actually having a chance? Not really a successful chance based on the actual results, but you guys, it was a big deal. It honestly was, especially the
short time. Too.
Jimmy Petronas seemed to have a little bit of an easier time than Randy Fine, obviously. So that was the second race. And a lot of the Randy Fine drama really came from internal Republicans who didn't like Randy Fine.
Yeah, nobody likes Randy Fine.
Yeah, so no one likes Randy Fine.
Except for Donald Trump, but even that.
Randy Fine is basically the Florida's Ted Cruz, apparently. And so there was a lot. That one was one where I was really concerned that we would lose that one, but we didn't. Yeah. But yeah, you guys, like I said, I always love when you guys put up a fight. Obviously, these are special elections as well, so a lot less voter turnout.
Right.
But
it was very different too. So these elections were called in December after Trump started making his appointments. Mike Walls was the congressman from Congressional District 6, put on the National Security Council, and then we had the whole Matt Gaetz drama, in and out, Attorney General, blah blah blah, and then Florida CFO Jimmy Petronas ended up being the Democratic or the Republican nominee for that seat. Yes, both districts were heavily favored for Republicans. The Matt Gaetz seat had been historically very, very Republican. Ended up being, I think, in the end, a Republican plus 19 or 20 district, according to like the Cook Political. Whereas actually CB6, even though had gone Republican the last few cycles, had flipped quite a bit. So there's quite a lot of movement. In that district. For me, the numbers actually I thought were going to be were better in Congressional District 6. That's where Josh Wheel had run against Randy Fine. And actually there was a lot of craziness that were happening in there. Both races raised a ton of money, $6 million in Congressional District 1 and $10 million in Congressional District 6. But the results did end up in a loss for both of the Democrats, but a significant gain in terms of the Trump voter switch there. So there was both those districts were won by Trump by 30 points, and they ended up having both of those to about 14 points in their respective districts. And Gay Belmont came in with 42% of the vote, and Josh Wheel came in with 43% of the vote. And in CD1, we did flip one whole county blue, from red to blue. So that was, and I think actually if we had the same energy in the other counties that we had in Escambia County, which is where Pensacola was, that it could have been possible. But again, it was 3 months. 3 months.
The real test is really going to be if that momentum is kept in the upcoming November election. Because again, this was a special election, so these remain to be outlier numbers, but they are nevertheless numbers to be looked at. And we'll see what happens there. I mean, look, you guys fought a very strong race that got a lot of attention. And in the end, of course, the Republicans won out, and I'm happy. But we need to pay attention, especially in the quality of candidates, people like Randy Fine. We need to be careful not to nominate dumb, candidates that have some controversy. I'm thinking, in particular, of Carmine Marcino, who's apparently considering a run for Congress.
Yeah. Well, we can definitely pivot back to that too. So yes, the next thing that we have to look forward to is the midterms in 2026. These two races, by the way, got national prominence because it was sort of seen as a last-ditch effort by Democrats to try to stop Donald Trump and the executive overreach via the U.S. House. And
you failed, haha.
We did fail. And really, there's no other political checkpoint on this until the 2026 midterm election.
Yes, unless the Republicans start taking back their congressional authority, which there are some talks that we're going to start seeing.
I would love to see that. Actually.
I would love to see that too. Again, we have 3 co-equal branches of government. We're actually seeing that a lot right now in Florida with our own state legislature challenging the governor and actually taking back their power. So we know it can happen. Republicans can challenge the Republican leadership in the executive branch in order to do what's right or what's not right, depending on your position on it all. But
I think it's pretty fair to say that there's 3 co-equal branches of government and that Congress has the power of the purse.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things exclusively given to Congress in terms of powers in the Constitution and that were further affirmed through Supreme Court cases. Yep. And I think that system works pretty well.
I think it I think that's the ideal system when we have a Congress that actually exercises authority. The problem is over decades, really, Congress has ceded its authority to the president and allowed the president to basically rule by fiat.
Yep.
And that's been the biggest problem of all. And it's both parties that do it, Democrats and Republicans.
Listen, Obama significantly expanded the executive order process, just it being a whole thing, really.
And we as Republicans are like, oh, he's basically ruling by executive order. And then Trump comes in and what's he doing right now? Ruling by executive order.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, so we're basically at what the people who feared the worst were going to happen, where now we actually have Donald Trump not only putting out a slew of executive orders, but are really doing things that are going into the ground of what Congress should be doing, things like tariffs, as well as doing things that are unconstitutional, like trying to roll back birthright citizenship, all of which are facing multitudes of legal challenges at this point in time.
Especially the tariff one. I mean, he's trying to say that tariffing all these countries is a national security issue. I didn't realize that we were threatened by the penguins up ahead in McDonald Islands. They must be seriously planning something down there. There must be like an underground facility of penguin soldiers. Yeah. That must be a massive national security threat.
It's clearly not national security.
No, it's clearly not national security.
Not in what would be a real sense.
And it's a problem. And here's the thing with me. I generally support tariffs as a concept. I know you disagree with me, but for me, I think that there's issues with it. But I think for me, I've always liked it because I feel like it's a way to raise revenue and justify a reduction of income tax. And it is, combined with proper industrial policy, a way to bring back jobs. The problem I have with him trying to do this now is this is really not the time we ran because of the affordability crisis. That was why people elected him. That is his mandate. And this goes against that mandate. If we really wanted to upend the economic system and turn us into a more economically nationalist, quasi-mercantilistic society, we should wait till after the midterms where we don't end up losing states.
Yeah.
Because let me tell you something. Yes, I 100% agree. I hate to say it, but if these tariffs are long-term, which it seems like they are, this is going to bring us possibly in 2008 recession levels of economic downturn.
If not 1929 level, depression levels.
I'm hoping
like the Smoot-Hawley Act,
not,
right? The last time that we tried broad sweeping tariffs like this actually deepened and worsened the depression in 1930. So.
Exactly. So timing is everything, and for me now is not the right time to take on this tariff system to start bringing in all these tariffs. And again, by doing this, this is what people are going to think about in 2026. We're going to lose probably the House and the Senate, and there goes all the Trump agenda. So this is just stupid timing on everyone's part. All it does is hurt Americans.
Yeah, and not only that, but the problem with it right now is not only just I have major problems with it as a philosophical thing. I believe in multilateral global institutions like the World Trade Organizations to settle conflicts and things like that. I do not believe that we should have an overabundance of isolationist trade precautions, which basically what tariffs are. I know that you just said that you thought they were revenue raising, but that is like kind of like something that happens. But what they really do, because they don't, if tariffs work, they work themselves out of a job essentially, right? Because they work so well that people stop importing those products, and they have diminishing returns no matter how you look at it. Okay, and so all it does is protect local industry, which is, if you see some of the trade imbalances around the world, that's what it has done. Okay. And we have things like sugar tariffs, right? So the number one protected industry in this country is sugar. Okay. And that's why there are no more hard candy manufacturers in this country, is because of the high cost on sugar. Okay. Because we protect our sugar growers and do not import it. So that's like one example of how that works. Now, so I don't think that any of this is going to work. The biggest problem immediately, though, is the fluctuating components of it.
Yeah.
And
the uncertainty.
Yeah, the uncertainty. You can't just say like, okay, one day we're going to have tariffs, and one day we're not going to have tariffs, or it's going to be 25% on this.
And this is basically how it's been for the past few months, especially when you look at like Canada and Mexico. We're about to put on the tariffs. Now the tariffs are off for another month. Now we're back on. Now they're not. Now it's like it's a bipolar trade policy. It's like one day we have tariffs, one day we don't. And by doing that, you're absolutely right. Businesses can't plan.
They can't plan.
The economy effectively goes on a standstill because no one knows what to do next, because we can't plan ahead.
Right. The economy loves stability.
Yeah.
Loves stability, loves predictability, because that is conducive for investments. Nobody wants to take high amounts of risk if they think that things are going to change on a dime in a minute. And what these are doing too, these tariffs are hurting American farmers, right? Because there's reciprocal tariffs that are going on to places like China. You know, the United States is the number one soybean producer in the country. We are not the number one soybean consumers. That goes to China.
So just to you, I'm pretty sure you mean the number one soybean producers in the world.
Right.
Did you say
in the world?
Yes, the United States definitely produces the most soybeans in the United States.
Right. So the United States is the number one soybean producer in the world. You are correct. And the number one soybean consumer is not the United States. Yeah. Okay. So we have to rely on integrated markets around the world to sell the products. Okay. Farmers who were growing soybeans this year cannot just change on a dime, because they've already grown those things.
Yep.
So they're going to lose money, and that's a problem. So this is like massively ill thought out, ill conceived. And I will say that I do think that there could be a place for some protectionist trade policies in certain areas, targeted, right, to protect certain industries, like Joe Biden did with the CHIPS Act. That's what that was, actually protecting, chips, microchip manufacturers, semiconductor processors being manufactured in the United States, and then partnered that with a subsidy to build those factories here in the United States. Those things are happening. But if we don't have a global market to then sell them to, we're hurting ourselves as well. So this is just really people who have a very somewhat sick desire to take over, and a very flawed way of viewing the economy. And I will say, I've heard this whole revenue thing again, but it just really doesn't add up, honestly.
So that's one of the reasons why I personally supported tariffs, is because of that. The other reason is the theory, and this is where I do give Joe Biden credit, is where you have the tariffs in combination with industrial policy.
Right.
You would have to do those hand in hand. If you put in tariffs but don't have a good industrial policy to back it up, then you end up losing jobs. You don't end up gaining jobs.
Right. And it's a long-term thing, right? Moving a factory is not like an overnight thing.
Exactly.
Redoing your supply chain to make it a more locally based supply chain is not an overnight thing.
Exactly.
And the people who are going to ultimately end up paying the price are the American consumers and the Americans who have their businesses, like the farmers, and then people who have jobs who are going to be affected
And
negatively
again,
by this tariff.
American citizens who specifically voted for President Trump because of affordability,
Right.
because everything was more expensive. And you go into stuff like housing prices and all, and property insurance and all of that stuff, and the property values and everything.
Yeah, destroying FEMA is not going to reduce insurance costs in the state of Florida. I'll tell you that right now. Anyway, so I wanted to shout out. So we have Howard Sack here. So another thing that happened in the last month is we had some movements in Florida politics in terms of both the gubernatorial race and the local congressional race. So Byron Donalds announced his run for Florida's governor, and speculatively against potentially Casey DeSantis, Ron DeSantis' wife, as Ron DeSantis is term limited out. But Byron Donalds just announced a $12 million quarter, which was a pretty big first shot, in terms of fundraising, and a Trump endorsement to boot.
Yeah.
So he is our congressman, but has spent much of his time running around the state and shoring up his support. He did have his official campaign launch in Bonita Springs a couple weeks ago, to which he was met with counter protesters who were protesting against Donald Trump, Elon Musk, and executive overreach. And I know that you were there, so why don't you tell us a little bit about what you saw?
Yeah, we were. Well, when we were inside, first off, I thought the event was wonderful. A lot of great people there. And look, we always respect the right of you guys to go out and with bullhorns tell us to go fuck ourselves, quite literally. Y'all were.
I wasn't there.
You were, yes.
I was working on the election.
Cindy, to her credit, was not there and was out.
And
there.
I will only tell you to go fuck yourself if you give me the finger or something similar.
Yeah.
In the first place.
Yeah, you'll finish it. You won't start. Yeah, sure.
That's right.
Anyway, look. Yeah, we all respect your right to freedom of speech. We heard you. You were heard in there. So congratulations, Democrats.
Hey!
You
Good job,
actually,
everybody.
yeah, we were. There were a bunch of us were pretty bugged out. So, and I think a couple of the speakers brought it up that you guys were shouting. So you got some honorable mentions. So yeah, look, congratulations, guys. You exercised your freedom of speech. Good on you for your First Amendment rights.
Okay, that's kind of funny. Okay,
Yeah.
so basically, this was kind of got twisted up in a few different things. So some people initially thought that this was Byron's attempt to hold a town hall. This was not his town hall.
No.
This was his campaign launch that he did in Bonita Springs, which kind of straddles, it's kind of the central part of Florida 19.
Which I will say, I agree with you. He does need to hold a town hall, and he had promised to Daybreak on 95 Fox News a few months ago that he would be holding a town hall. So, he is not the type of person who is shy to run away from people challenging him.
Yep,
He's not like any of these other people who are running away from town halls because they don't want to deal with their constituents. He is not afraid to take up a challenge. In fact, he relishes in it. He loves it. I think he uses.
That's why I still can get a meeting with him.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And even you can admit, even in the meetings, he has a sense of charmingness with them. That
he does. Yeah. And no, he's always, going back to the 2020 campaign, he was the only Republican to ever debate.
Yeah.
Period. And
We've always applauded him for it because the Republicans, generally speaking, don't like to debate the Democrats.
Well, and anybody who's a Terry Miller candidate is told not to.
Basically.
By the way. And that's mostly because they're morons and we'll eat them alive. But anyway, anybody who's a Terry Miller candidate and wants to prove me wrong, my phone number is 239-351-5574. I look forward to your call and I look forward to debating you.
Look, I love a good debate. That's why we do the show.
We do.
Challenge each other. And
we're having fun with it and trying to show some levity because I do think that we get bogged down in a lot of different things right now.
Yeah.
But I still think it's good to talk about it, and you can still have different
perspectives. And drinking, we never went through our drinks, by the way.
So I'm having this thing. I guess they're calling it a cowabunga now. It's like a candy caramel apple daiquiri. It's freaking ridiculously
I'm gonna have
good.
to try hers next time, but right now I'm doing the Fruitopia, which is really good. I don't drink that often, but it actually has been a difficult week. Yesterday, I won't go into too much details because it was internal, but if you were at the Lee County GOP meeting, you understand why I'm drinking right now.
So we are hosting our live show at Millennial. I would love to hear more about that.
We'll talk later in private.
Right. So if you want to come and join us when we do these live shows, we would love to have you. We love having the Peanut Gallery here. You can grab a beer. We can have a chat afterwards. That's part of why we are doing these shows here live and in person, is so that we can try to cultivate that sense of talking a bit across the aisle, with a little less shouting than usual.
Yes,
even though I did shout at someone on the street as I came in because he flipped me off, but.
Yeah, which again, why are you doing that when she's not protesting? I cannot.
He didn't like my flag.
Protesting, then yeah, you're kind of. And this is something that even happened at the protests, where you're going to be protesting, and someone wants to exercise their First Amendment rights to counter protest. They have the right to do that too.
Right. Yeah.
And so, but if you're like just driving in or walking in the street, why are you being an asshole? That just,
So there was, at the Byron Donald Sugar Shack event, there was a bit of additional controversy over all of that as well. And I do know that there was a handful of people that seemed to be a little bit more agitated than usual, but the vast majority of the people who were on the Democratic side were a lot of boomers. Let me tell you that.
Yeah.
And most of them would like, listen, I'm too much for them. Put it that way. They would never shout back at somebody who gave them the finger on the street. Yet I did.
From the video that I saw, so for those that aren't aware, our very good friend, our very close friend here on the show, we love him. Both of us love him dearly. Brendan Leslie, who runs Florida's Voice, decided to, we'll say, engage with some of the protesters. And
some people might say instigate or agitate.
Sure. Which
is very much
it's very much his MO, but again,
yeah.
He wasn't, from what I saw from the video, he wasn't violent or assaulting anyone. He was just engaging and or instigating, trying to have a conversation regardless of his motives. And there was a back and forth, and then someone spit. It looked like on the floor next to him. I don't know at him.
It looked like on the floor in front of him.
So it was then a bunch of people, not Brandon to his credit, but a bunch of people were like, "You should have her arrested for assault." And I'm like looking at these comments, like, "Dear God, these Republicans are special little snowflakes." It's like I saw the spit. It didn't look like it. It might have hit his shoe, but Brendan obviously didn't press charges, and loved the interactions. What I found interesting, though, was when I posted it on Facebook, how many of my Republican colleagues really don't like him. I don't know if you saw those comments, because I shared it from Big Mouth Media, the story, and just, oh my God, there is a lot of backlash from Republicans against Brandon. So. Look,
So I did see that, and I will say that it definitely was not an interaction that I would have supported. I do think that Brendan was antagonizing those folks, but spitting on them is just kind of gross. So, I just don't appreciate that. Now, what I then reported on via Big Mouth Media was a different set of altercations that was being reported by several senior women, and these women are, like I said, these are the ones who think I'm too much, okay? Right? And they were the ones telling me how Brendan and parts of his crew were coming up. They were being physical. They were getting in their faces. He was shouting at them, and he was jostling with them in front of LCSO, who did nothing to stop or intervene.
So again, I didn't see any video of that, which is why, again, we're even trained when we do conservative groups. We're trained to make sure we have recordings going on for these type of situations. And I think that's definitely important. And you guys should have, or whoever organized that should have had that there as well.
They were senior women. Let me reiterate.
I get that.
Why it is that they didn't have their camera going, because they're not always necessarily
But someone in that group should have been consistently recording, especially when someone was coming up. I don't disagree with you. This is and you know this. We both come from the organizing scene, right? We both come from the organizational scene. The fact is, it's a safety issue. You have to have someone. It's a safety issue and it's a liability issue. Right. You have to have someone recording your people at all times. So if someone goes at you, because now all we saw is Brendan, him getting someone spat on.
Right.
So we don't know. We can't tell for sure whether or not Brendan was assaulting people or not.
But I definitely I do believe, and there was.
I'm not
accounts.
saying that the senior women are lying. I'm not saying that they were telling the truth either. We don't know. That's the problem.
Right.
Is we don't have that video evidence, so we can't bring it to the police and say that nothing was going on.
Right. So that was that. So the other part of it, it looks like he just left, but we had Howard Sapp here who was saying hello in our messages here. So once Byron Donalds had announced that he was going to be running for governor, then the kind of race for Florida Congressional District 19 began. The Democrat who has stepped forward thus far is Howard Sapp. So he is announced. Reverend Howard Sapp had run for House District 78 for the past 2 years, and one of the top performing Democrats in our region, and is now throwing his hat in to run against. It will be an open seat against. So it's sure to be a very fun primary for the Republicans.
Yes. Let me get another break.
Let's see, who do we have so far? Some douchebag named Jack, who is always on these Facebook groups talking shit. Jack Lombardi.
Jack Lombardi announced?
I think that he's one of the speculative candidates.
I have not heard that. So there's
I blocked him from my page. So Jack, in case you're watching, stay on your own fucking social media. Thank you very much. You can go if you want to be in the assholes group or whatever, and that makes you feel good and think you're campaigning. That's fine. Don't come to my personal page. I think I'm going to tolerate any of your bullshit. Build your own social media platform.
Yeah.
And
so the only one that announced,
there's another carpetbagger.
Jim Oberweis.
Jim Oberweis, speaking of carpetbaggers, who loved to run for Florida 19, not to mention our favorite carpetbagger who ran for Florida 19, Dan Bongino, who blocked me on Twitter for saying that he's a carpetbagger every time he's trending. But I did find out that his new official role as the deputy CIA director, he has not blocked me. So I remind him that he's a carpetbagger that got less votes than me.
What do you mean,
deputy?
He's deputy CIA director?
Yeah, Don Bongino.
Oh, Bongino, FBI director.
Oh, whatever.
Okay.
Cash Patel's little bitch. That's what he is. And so his official account on Twitter does not have me blocked yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, congrats on that one. Yeah, that was an interesting race. And obviously we have, speaking of carpetbaggers, Madison Cawthorn is, of course, seen as someone who's going to be running, which is odd. Here's the thing with Madison Cawthorn. For someone who's supposedly going to be running for Congress, he has not been active in Republican circles. I don't see him at. I was just at the Young Republicans event. He wasn't there. Cape Coral Republican Club, Trump Club, Eastleigh, any of the Republican clubs. If you're running for Congress in the Republican primary, before you run, you're gonna start running the circuit. You know what I mean? You're gonna start making.
Do you think though that he really feels like he has to do that? Because I feel like he's kind of Byron's handpicked successor.
No, I don't think. But first off, I don't think Byron is even going to endorse anyone. But even then,
because how did Madison Cawthorn get a house in Cape Coral after he lost his job?
Madison, I think, is arrogant enough to believe that he doesn't need to do it.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
That's what I'm thinking too. But I'm thinking if that's what he's thinking, he's an idiot. Okay. The only people he's associated himself with is the former chairman of the Republican Party, who's kind of made himself into a pariah over this battle between him and Spencer Roach, who's another speculative congressional candidate.
Yes.
Where they got into a back and forth that has gotten so bad that there's a lot of internal drama. The reason why I was talking about drinking today is the county GOP.
That former GOP chair, Mike Thompson, also loves to talk shit online about me as well.
Yeah. So. He is has less of a filter than I do. We'll just put it like that.
But it is nice to see him doing something other than bootlicking to the Russians.
Look, I personally like Mike. Me and Mike are good friends, but yeah, I don't know what got into him over that Spencer Roach thing, and he has apologized for it.
Do you think he was the one that shot into his house?
No, I definitely do not think he did that. Absolutely not.
I'm just adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah, don't add fuel to that fire. That was a nightmare.
Another speculative.
I was communications chair during that fiasco. It was a nightmare.
So another speculative candidate is Jenna Persons, Malika, who is
really.
Yep, there's talk about that she may be interested in running for the seat, which would be very wonderful because then that would mean House 78 which is the seat that I'm running for, would become an open seat.
Of the current state reps, Jenna Persons Malika does have the most accomplishments, if you will, the most legislative bills. she has the most bona fides to say, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this.
Absolutely. She was the author of this, co-author of the 6-week abortion ban. And she just got another bill passed this week through the House, which significantly curtails, if not makes it almost impossible for citizen initiatives to get on the ballot in the state of Florida. So she's really got her chops being anti-democratic and curtailing the rights of bodily freedom. So right on
Very
on point.
Republican issues, yes, of course. No,
yes, Stepford wife of Ron, which actually might be the thing that does her in. She has somebody who's been straddling the line between Trump and DeSantis, having to have spent many years recently kissing Ron DeSantis' ass in order to get anything done in the Florida legislature. She may have to turn into a 180 and prove some Trump credentials in order to win the race, but we shall see.
And then Carmine Marcino is also now heavily speculated to run for Congress, because what do you do when you're being accused of embezzling from the taxpayer?
I think you run for Congress so you can put pressure on the DOJ to drop the investigation.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And apparently there's another scandal I just saw where apparently a sheriff's deputy was driving home drunk instead of spending his time in jail, ended up spending some time at home without any charges.
Yes, and pressured other deputies to then alter the reports so that he didn't actually have a DUI, which frankly sounds pretty much in alignment with a lot of things that Carmine has been involved with in terms of other prominent people in the community.
I don't think Carmine look, people have only just now started talking about all of Carmine's skeletons. If he makes the decision to run for Congress, his career would be over, because don't think for a second that Terry Miller, whoever he runs, is going to let any of that slide. He is going to unbury every...
Terry, I'm sorry for whatever I said, but please do everything you can.
This will be the one time where even the most ardent Terry Miller opponents will be like, go it,
Terry,
destroy.
Go. Yeah, destroy. I'm all for you running neg on Carmine Marcino. Actually, I think Jenna Persons will be the Terry Miller candidate.
You really think it's going to be Terry, not Spencer?
Yeah, we'll have to see. Or Jenna, not Spencer.
Yeah, Jenna, not Spencer. That's what I meant.
Was Spencer Terry Miller?
Spencer is Terry Miller's like their best. Yeah, right. Yeah.
Anyway, so we shall see. Let's talk before we end for today about yesterday. April 5th was the at least third or fourth in a series of nationwide protests being loosely organized under the 50-51 movement, which is 50 states, 50 capitals, one movement or something. But basically there's been this nationwide uprising against executive overreach, against Doge cuts, and we had hosted several here in Southwest Florida. My organization, Save Our Democracy, hosted a Cape Coral rally that was held outside of Byron Donald's office. We targeted Byron Donald's office as a place because he's in the federal government. He's the federal representative. He is in the position to actually do something to stop executive overreach. We had 500 people that showed up there. 2,000 people are estimated to have joined the Fort Myers one, which was on the corner of Daniels and 41.
Actually, right by our GOP headquarters.
Yes, right in front of the GOP headquarters were 2,000 Democrats who were really pissed off at Trump. So that must have been a sight to see.
That was actually, that was right after our regular GOP meeting. So you probably got around 12 p.m. a bunch of people driving over and flicking you off, I'm sure.
Oh, I wasn't there. I was in Cape Coral.
But
that was fantastic. That makes it a lot more fun. But we also had 400 people in Punta Gorda, and then we had another estimated 2,000 in Naples outside the government offices, which is where Byron Donald's office is. That was about 5,000 people who had gathered in protest against Trump, Elon Musk, and executive overreach. And I will go out on a limb and say is the largest gatherings and protests that we've ever seen in this region.
Yeah, of Democrats for sure.
I think in anything, I haven't seen this level of people who have been gathered for anything at all.
Well, no, I mean,
in terms of protests.
In terms of protests. Yeah, probably that might be accurate. I can't really think of anything on our side. We usually get to work. We don't protest on our
It was. I know that's people have to say. So it was Saturday. Okay, it was Saturday, and the last one in March it was in the evening.
Yeah.
So I love this like good and drop. Okay, and by the way, it was a lot of retirees and
Yeah,
seniors
exactly.
who were protesting
Well,
against Social
that's
Security.
the other part. That's the other part too. Is most of the Republican volunteers are that too. They're mostly seniors who are retired.
I mean, it's just a way to malign somebody else, and I mean that's fine. I'll go right back at it. So yeah, okay. Not paid protesters. And in fact, here I wanted to show you this because Byron Donald said that we were astroturfers. So just get a little. This is the letter. This is the second letter that we sent to Byron Donald. It's signed by some of the 500 people, actual real live constituents that came outside of Byron Donald's office, demanding and asking him to do something about executive overreach. To which, when we delivered this letter to him last time, he insinuated that we were paid actors, which is a very common trope. Not paid. I don't have enough money. I don't know if you guys have known Democrats, but we don't have a lot of money.
I make more money than her at a call center than she does at her professional job teaching people how to call.
Yes, correct.
Yeah, she does not have the money.
I do not have the money to pay these people. They literally showed up.
You'd think I would be asking for an actual salary if we were making money here, guys. Seriously. Or she was making money. I don't know. I'm fine financially. She's not.
I'm not. This is we sent this letter, so we're going to be delivering this. Last time we did this, Byron Donald apparently had said that we were harassing his staff members, which was hilarious because last time I checked, the congressional representatives were there to hear from their constituents. Byron may not remember that now that he's running for governor, but I certainly do. So we will be politely and respectfully handing this over just as we did last time, so that he can have it and have a look and see all of the actual people and their signatures who were very upset with him not basically standing up against what they see as a destruction of our democracy.
So I will agree with you, broadly speaking, that again, we have three co-equal branches of government for a reason, and in general, the president is not supposed to have all this authority and all this power. Congress needs to be taking their power back. So on that, I do 100% agree with you. With that being said, I believe Congress should move to enact a lot of the agenda the executive branch is wanting to enact. But they need to actually enact it. They need to get the job done.
Y'all have beyond you have a trifecta essentially.
Yeah.
Conservatives control the Supreme Court. Republicans have the presidency and also control the Senate and the House. This is the time. See, here's the difference too. So Barack Obama was criticized for doing executive orders when he had a split Congress. When the Republicans gained control of the House, Democrats still had the control of the Senate, but they kept blocking. Mitch McConnell famously weaponized the filibuster to stop everything from going through. That's why Obama started doing more executive orders. There's actually no reason, like governance reason, that Donald Trump needs to be doing executive orders because his party is in control. He should be able to rally the support to pass anything that he wants through Congress right now. Yeah.
This is a failure of Mike Johnson's leadership, quite frankly, that we haven't been able to get anything done on the agenda already. So 100% agree. So on that end, I 100% agree. We need to have a Republican Congress doing their job and not depending on Donald Trump's executive orders.
And here's the reason why this is important too, is because each one of those congressional representatives, the 435 in the House, and then even the senators, 2 per state, they do face accountability when they go back into their state. They face re-election every 2 years in the House. They face, every 6 years in the Senate. And that's an accountability measure that the American people, the American people has on our government, right?
And in particular, yes, 100%, and Republicans really also do want their congressional leaders to get things done. So them failing to act will also cost them votes as well.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, in the last month, that we've been convening these rallies. I was very shocked when 500 people were in Cape Coral because Cape Coral doesn't get that many people. And many of those people were not people that I've met before. Many of them told me I'm an NPA, I was a Republican, but I'm worried about Social Security. I'm worried about Medicare. When I was working for Gay Valmont's campaign, that's a big military district. There are 7 military installations in Congressional District 1. Many of those folks that I was talking to up there, again, I'm not allowed to be political because I'm military, right? Or I'm an NPA, or I'm a Republican. But the cuts to the VA were affecting them, and all of those folks. And I really didn't think about this, but the military families, their spouses usually get those probationary jobs in the government as government contractors or within the administration.
I have heard that, yeah.
So those were some of the very first people that were laid off. And it's not because they weren't new. It's that when their spouse gets transferred to a new military installation, they're probationary in their new post, in their new location for 2 years. So they can be doing the exact same job that they've been doing for 15 years, just in a new place. And then they were fired summarily during all those cuts. Yeah. So the DOGE cuts are not about saving money or waste, fraud, and abuse. And let me tell you how many military people who I heard were offended when their jobs, their families' jobs, veterans who were contractors were told that their work was waste, fraud, and abuse. Yeah. So this is not only just Democrats anymore. These are everyday people who enjoyed living in this country, one of the best countries in the world, right? Had the biggest economy in the world, had a government that was enviable around the world, and enjoyed that stability, and whose lives are now being upended for political reasons.
Yeah, DOGE has been relatively irresponsible in how they've been doing their cuts. We need government efficiency.
Yeah,
100%. We need to make the necessary cuts in order to make it efficient. But it was very much a bull in the china shop situation with DOGE, where it's like, we're gonna just take everything out and then put what we think needs to go back in, and it has been obviously chaotic, obviously all over the place. And so implementation, theory is great, practice and implementation is where it fails.
Absolutely.
So,
and if
this is
there
again
was a real,
where there needs to be congressional insight.
Exactly. If there was a real actual concern for efficiency, the inspectors generals would have not been fired.
Yeah.
Period. Because that's their job. Okay. You would not have had the Office for the Freedom of Information Act, all of their staff members be put on leave this week as well. That's a transparency issue. So these are huge problems. So this is not about ferreting out waste and fraud and abuse. This is about gutting government for the purpose of privatization. Okay, so companies like Elon Musk, Starlink, and things like that can come in and eat up those public dollars. And I'm fundamentally opposed to that.
Well, I'm okay with certain privatization, depending on if it's something that is not necessarily something the government should be running. But that's again case by case basis, and again you're doing it irresponsibly. Is what's really happening right now. Is just the amount of just cuts for the sake of cuts. It's like you have to be smart with your cutting.
There's one thing I want to point out about privatization too, because as much as I do fundamentally believe it is about transferring money to certain private entities like Elon Musk, it's also about shirking responsibility and corruption, okay? Because when there's these third-party contractors that go from here to here to here, there is no accountability anymore. Because you can just say, oh, well, it wasn't us, it was the contractor. And then the contractor goes, well, that wasn't us, it was whatever, the city that said it, or whatever. And what ends up happening, who gets the short end of the straw, is the American people. Right? So there's nobody to call because it's not a government organization that's accountable to the people anymore. Right? I mean, think about some of the issues that we had, like with trash pickup, Cape Coral had huge issues with trash pickup. There's the same thing. Right. It's the same thing like that. When you don't have anybody to call, you don't have any accountability, it's the consumers. It's the American people who have paid for this, whether or not you want to, people like that.
In theory, you have accountability set forth in the contract within it, but you're absolutely right. When you're dealing with a private entity, you basically have to hold the private entity accountable. And how do you hold them accountable if you're average citizen? You have to assume that your government is going to hold them accountable and put measures in the contract that will allow them to hold the corporation accountable.
Well, and in some of these things, it's really just not feasible to have multiple companies as well. right? Like that's the other issue that we have is that they have monopolies, right? You don't get to choose if you want Waste Pro or another garbage company. You don't get to choose which electric company you want. You don't get to choose whether or not you get FPL or LCEC, right? You have it, and that's it. So these are private companies getting public dollars, right? And they have a monopoly over it. And so it's not even what people in their minds have in terms of free market or competitiveness. It actually creates glut and people who are profiting off the backs of American citizens.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting topic for sure.
For another day. Says
yeah.
Sean, whose own Republican Party was beating up on themselves this weekend. Meanwhile, local Democrats pretty much align. We all think Elon Musk really sucks. We are very upset about the potential loss of our democracy, and that's why you see thousands of people.
I have never seen the Democrats so angry at an African American autistic man in my life. This has been anyway. This has been a Democrat and a Republican walk into a bar.
I've been your Democratic host, Cindy Gagné.
I've been your Republican host, Sean Hartman, here at Millennial Brewing.
It took me a minute to get that one. It took a minute. I'm trying to find our banner. I don't know where it is. Oh, there we go. Subscribe. All right. So thanks so much for joining us here. We do hope that you will see us. Come and join us again. We will announce the next time we're going to be at Millennial Brewing. I'm going to be actually next weekend enjoying a movie premiere of Worth the Fight in New York City, which is based off of the work of life's work of Steve Canton, who's a boxing trainer here in his nonprofit.
Oh, yes, okay.
And the mentoring program that we started over at his gym. He's got the full-length feature coming out, and that will be next Friday. So I'm going to be doing that. So stay tuned to Big Mouth Media's social media to find out when our next live a Democrat and Republican walk into a bar. And of course, if you enjoyed this content, please do subscribe to us. You can get an annual subscription for $49.99, and that helps us keep the lights on. So you can go ahead and check that out at bigmouthmediafl.com. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.